In today's video, I will be taking a look at a hypothetical 2024 GOP primary prediction between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, one the former president of the United States, and one the current governor of the state of Florida. Now I'll be doing every single state proportionally, and whoever wins more than half of the delegates would end up becoming the hypothetical primary election winner. So let's start with the state of Washington. So Washington's a more suburban state. There's a lot of urban areas surrounding the, I believe it's Seattle area, and that area is probably going to lean more towards DeSantis. Remember, Trump can do better in the rural areas, while DeSantis could do better with some of the suburban areas. So of the state of Washington, I think DeSantis should be able to carry around 63% of the delegates to Trump's 36% of the delegates. So for the state of Oregon, a similar issue. I think DeSantis will get around 59% of the delegates against Trump's 39%. California is quite a large state we'll get to later. Now for the state of Idaho, a very rural state. This state should be able to award its delegates largely to Donald Trump. He should be able to win around 71% of the delegates, maybe 70%, against DeSantis' 31%. Now for the state of Montana. Montana has some more suburban areas, but it's still a largely rural state. And thus, I think Trump should still be able to win more delegates, 16-11. And right now, Trump and DeSantis are pretty much equal, with 46 states plus 5 special territories left to go. The state of Wyoming here, Wyoming, I think Trump should be able to easily win the state. He was able to easily oust previous Representative Liz Cheney and to get Harriet Hageman to end up replacing her, so it looks like Trump's grip in the state of Wyoming is quite strong. Now the Dakotas are in a similar story here, so Trump should be able to easily win the Dakotas against DeSantis. So North Dakota and South Dakota, both of them are probably going to give around 69% of the delegates to Trump against 31% to DeSantis. This is assuming there's no other candidates in this race. Now, California here, there's 172 delegates at stake. That's actually even more than the state of Texas. So for the state of California, I think Trump should be able to get many of the rural areas. He should be able to get around 40% of the delegates to DeSantis' 60%. So that does give DeSantis a boost, and now Trump and DeSantis are both tied. Now for the state of Nevada. Nevada only has 25 delegates, and this is a state that hosts its primaries relatively earlier. So in this hypothetical prediction, I think Trump's going to get around 10 delegates, maybe 11 to DeSantis' 14. Trump should be able to do very well in the rural areas. DeSantis should be able to do very well in Clark and Washoe. The state of Alaska here, very interesting state. I think Trump should be able to get around 15% of the delegates to DeSantis' 13. Now the state of Utah here, again, they do have Mitt Romney and Mike Lee, two relatively not super conservative U.S. senators compared to some of the other Republican senators. However, I think that Trump should still be able to narrowly win against Ron DeSantis. So Trump does have a 3-delegate vote advantage. Now going to the state of Arizona, that's definitely going to prefer DeSantis. DeSantis will get around 35 delegates, or around 61.4% of the vote, to Trump's 22 delegates. Now, for the state of Colorado here, DeSantis should also be able to get quite a few delegates here. If you look at it, so DeSantis should be able to get around 25 delegates to Trump's 12. So that gives him quite a big boost as well as that in the state of New Mexico, proportionally speaking, DeSantis should be able to get around 14 to Trump's 8. So that does give DeSantis a 30-delegate lead because he's able to do better in some of the more liberal states. Now going to the state of Nebraska. So for the state of Nebraska here, I think that Trump should be able to get around 22 delegates maybe, or maybe 23, against DeSantis' 14. Again, a very rural state. Now for the state of Kansas, there's some Republicans there, some registered conservatives in many of the suburbs next to Kansas City. However, this is still a state that Trump has a very strong grip on because there's a lot of rural areas. So 23 to Trump and 16 to DeSantis. Oklahoma, very, very rural state. That should give Trump around 30 delegates to DeSantis' 13. Now, Hawaii, I'm not super sure, but I think DeSantis should be able to get around 12 delegates to Trump's 8, sorry. So that actually ties Trump and DeSantis yet again. Now for the state of Texas, there's a lot of rural areas, but there's a lot of suburban areas that are registered to the Republican Party. Many of those registered conservative voters that actually starts to vote for independents or even Democrats. So I think DeSantis should be able to get around 85 delegates, maybe 84 delegates, so I'm going to give DeSantis 84 delegates to Trump's 71. There's still a lot of rural areas in the state of Texas, so DeSantis does have a 13-delegate lead over Donald Trump at this moment in time. However, there's a lot of rural America left, so Trump can definitely still catch up. Now for the state of Arkansas here, Trump should be able to get around 27 delegates to DeSantis' 13. So that gives Trump a boost, and now he's back ahead of DeSantis, but by just one delegate. Now, Iowa holds its primaries early. It's a very small town state. It's a very white state, so I'm going to give Trump around 25 delegates, because this is the first state to technically hold its primaries. It's a caucus still, but it's technically the first primaries. This should help Trump have an early lead in some of the delegate counts. Now for the state of Louisiana here, again, similar situation. Trump should be able to get around 60 to 62% of the delegates. I'm going to give Trump 29 to DeSantis' 17. Now for the state of Missouri, a similar situation here. Trump should be able to get around 60 to 63% of the delegates against DeSantis' 20 delegates, which is 37% of the total delegate count. Now, right now, Trump is actually ahead by 40 delegates, but there is also some large states such as Florida that DeSantis could actually do quite well in, as well as a state like Georgia. Well, Trump still has some other rural states, as well as states in New England where he was born from, so that could technically help him boost his numbers. For the state of Mississippi here, it does have a quite large black population. However, those are not voters in the Republican primaries, so Trump should still be able to get around 27 delegates to DeSantis' 12. A similar situation in Alabama, Trump should be able to get around 70% of the delegates to DeSantis' 30%. These rural states are definitely going to vote largely in favor of Trump. So for the state of Tennessee here, I think that Trump should be able to get around 37 delegates to DeSantis' 21. There are some Memphis area suburban voters that might prefer DeSantis, but Trump should be able to easily win that state. Now the next state is the state of Kentucky. Kentucky right here, again, Trump should have an easy grip on some of the rural areas, while DeSantis does have more of a grip in some of the suburban areas, but those areas don't really exist in a state like Kentucky. For the state of Florida here, this should give DeSantis a huge boost, considering he's currently down 100 delegates. He definitely needs that. So for the state of Florida, although both of them are technically from the state of Florida, Trump just recently registered in the state so that he could cast a vote for himself in the 2020 general election. So I think DeSantis, as the governor, should be able to easily win the state. He should be able to win about 62 to 63% of the delegates to Trump's 37. So now DeSantis is back in the game, as he just shrunk the delegate difference by around 30. So the next state is the state of Minnesota. Now, Minnesota is going to be quite a close state, but there are a lot of suburban areas around Minneapolis. So that should help DeSantis win the state with around a margin of 21 delegates to 18. This is a relatively close state. Now for the state of Wisconsin, there's a lot of suburban areas like Waukesha, Kenosha. Those are areas that are going to prefer DeSantis. But there's also a lot of rural areas that's going to support Trump. So at the end of the day, I think this will be very close. I think DeSantis carries 27 delegates against Trump's 25. So this is a very close state, but DeSantis does come up on top. So for the state of Georgia here, this is where you're going to also see DeSantis having a huge boost. He should be able to do very well in the Atlanta suburbs. Now, there's a lot of Republican voters in the rural areas as well. So Trump is still going to get 42% of the total delegate count. So in the state of Illinois here, Donald Trump, there's a lot of areas in Illinois, a lot of rural areas, and those are pretty much most of the land is in rural areas in the state of Illinois. However, Cook County has a huge population that's going to end up favoring DeSantis. So I'm going to give DeSantis 40 against Trump's 27. So DeSantis is behind by less than 50 delegates now. So he's definitely back in the game. Indiana right now, I think I'm going to give Trump 42 delegates. So 60% to DeSantis' 40%. Now for the state of Michigan, again, a very close state, but again, there's a lot of areas like Grand Rapids, Kent County. There's also a lot of areas like Detroit that's going to end up favoring DeSantis. So DeSantis still technically wins with 44 delegates to Trump's 29. So DeSantis is catching up a lot of the delegate count difference. South Carolina, I think it's still going to prefer Trump by a margin of 28 delegates to 22. There's still a lot of rural areas there, but there are also areas like Charleston that's going to favor DeSantis. Now for the state of Ohio here. So Ohio, Cincinnati, Cleveland, those are areas that are going to favor DeSantis. Trump, however, I think still narrowly screws by the state against DeSantis' 38. So Trump still wins Ohio because he did very well there in the 2020 presidential election. Now the state of Pennsylvania here, I think DeSantis should be able to win. There's a lot of suburban areas around the Pittsburgh area, the Philadelphia area, while Trump still gets 40 delegates, so pretty impressive as well. And right now DeSantis is still behind by around 50, but again, a lot of the areas remaining are liberal areas that are probably going to support Ron DeSantis. Now for the state of North Carolina here, DeSantis is probably going to carry around 50 to 53% of the delegate count against Trump's around 46-47%. So with West Virginia, definitely a lot of blue dogs there, however, so DeSantis could actually do quite well here. I'm going to give him 16 delegates to Trump's 18. Virginia, a lot of suburban voters. Those voters are going to favor DeSantis. So DeSantis gets around 30 to Trump's 19. So DeSantis is behind by less than 35 delegates. Now for the state of New York. New York, it's Trump's technical home state. However, he did change residence, so that's probably going to hurt him a little bit. Also, both candidates are actually very close to the amount needed to win their respective nominations. All you need is around 1,250 delegates. Both candidates have crossed 1,050. So I think DeSantis actually ends up winning the state of New York with around 53% to Trump's 46%. If you can't seem to notice anything yet, it's that many of the orange states or DeSantis states are states that are more Democratic leaning, or some more competitive states, while Trump is sweeping many of the more rural states, more of those traditionally conservative and cohort Republican states. Now for the state of Maryland, definitely DeSantis easily wins there 25-13 in favor of DeSantis. DC, there's only 19 delegates. However, DeSantis easily squeaks around 13 to Trump 6. So Trump is only up by 7 delegates now, and there's still quite a few New England states that are going to favor Ron DeSantis. Delaware as well, similar situation there. 11 delegates for DeSantis and 5 delegates for Trump. Now Trump is only ahead by 1 delegate. Going to the state of New Jersey here, similar situation. Some rural areas, but mostly suburban areas, gonna favor DeSantis 31-18. The state of Vermont here, very progressive. It's also gonna favor DeSantis by around 10-7. So now Trump is down by 15 delegates, and it's going to be very hard for him to actually catch up, considering I've filled all the rural states already. Now going to the state of New Hampshire. This is the first actual primary state. It's behind Iowa, but Iowa holds a caucus, so they're not technically the same. Regardless, Trump should be able to get 8 delegates here against DeSantis' 14. Massachusetts, a state that Elizabeth Warren is from, on the Democratic side, Ron DeSantis ends up winning 23 delegates against Trump's 18. Connecticut, I think DeSantis should be able to also win the state by about 17 to 11. And finally, the state of Rhode Island here. Again, DeSantis should be able to win that New England state 11 to 8. For the state of Maine, Ron DeSantis should also be able to win that state around 13 to 9. Trump should be able to do very well in the 2nd district, but typically they have lower turnout. Finally, there are 59 delegates left. Puerto Rico has the plurality of those delegates because they have the largest population. DeSantis should be able to win around 14 to Trump's 9. The Virgin Islands should have a similar split, around 6 for DeSantis and 4 for the former president, 3 for the former president. The state, and I actually forgot where that is. 6 for DeSantis, 3 for Trump. Guam, 6 for DeSantis and 3 for Trump. And finally, AS, also a similar situation here. All 4 of these islands actually have 9 delegates, except Puerto Rico with 23 because it has a significantly larger population. So there we have it. Assuming all the delegates are distributed proportionally to how many votes each candidate receives in each state, and there are no winner-take-all states, you can see that Ron DeSantis ends up winning with 1,309 delegates against Trump's 1,253. This is very close, but in the end, DeSantis ends up squeaking on top. Also, this is using the 2020 map, not the 2024 map, so there are going to be slight inaccuracies, but that is pretty much the map here. You can see it's a very close race, but it looks like that DeSantis will end up squeaking on top. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.